Welcome back, everyone. It has been more than a year since we've taken a look at any of these list doctors, but I wanted to do one. We've had Grizzled out for a couple of weeks at this point. I've got last time we were talking about Grizzled, and I was talking to Nemo and David and Gustavo, and they were both getting 20 games in over the course of a week or whatever. I've had an opportunity to get about 20 games in of Grizzled at this point. So let's go ahead and start talking about it. We have a bunch of lists that we're going to be going through today. I asked YouTube members, so people who have joined the channel who are supporting. I asked them to submit lists. I got a lot more submissions than I'm going to be talking about in here, but for whenever I do this kind of thing, I do want to give at least a little bit of feedback so people who don't get featured in the video will have an opportunity to, at least get some basic thoughts on what I think of the list that they are providing. Today, I do have 4 lists, again, all from YouTube members, and if you are interested in doing this yourself, again, go ahead and join the channel, join the Discord, and we'll talk about it there. So to start off with, the first one that I got was from the YouTube member Shovel, and this is a Grizzled Company list. He plays it mostly on WTC terrain, and he really likes the idea of building it for a competitive environment, using the indirect and keeping the Castellan brick and the 2 Dorns. This is because Shovel says that they are playing in France, you do expect that there is going to be a lot of WTC terrain. It is going to be built for more of a team's environment, which does create different pressures on it. There's a lot of thoughts that I had about this list overall, but let's go ahead and go over it really quick. It's a Cadian Castellan, 2 Cadian Command Squads, a Commissar with the Abhuman detail so that you can order Ogren keyword units, Gaunt's Ghost, Nork Deadog, and Ogren Bodyguard, 2 Rugaldorn Commanders, 2 Chimeras, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 1 unit of 6 Bulgren, 3 units of Catachan Mortars, 1 Field Ordnance, and then 2 Kazarkin. So, a couple things about this list in general. I was looking at a lot of the math behind the 3 Catachan Mortars and a Field Ordnance battery, and I'm still not super convinced. I've heard a couple people talking about this as a thing that you can look to do, but my major concern about it is only slightly better than a coin flip that this package kills 5 Marines on an objective. And that's if you spend a CP to get the ignores cover on the Field Ordnance battery, you get to about 55% that you're actually going to kill them. Which means that if you are, rolling unlucky and you just roll you roll on the low end of what you expect, even a little bit, suddenly you're not actually killing the whole unit. And because we are playing in a version of 40k where the last wound on a thing is by far the most important, that's one of the big things that I look at when identifying what I actually want to do. So with this, the other major thing is we are spending about 300 points between the 3 Catachan Mortars and the Field Ordnance battery on indirect fire, and as you get better and better, as you play against stronger and stronger players, people will realize more and more that they're just supposed to run at you. They can't afford to be eating 5 turns of getting shot at by indirect. They should want to start the game as fast as possible, and they're going to be trying to play a game that's only 2 or 3 battle rounds realistically, instead of trying to play the 5 battle rounds that most indirect lists are trying to play. With this in mind, we do have a couple of tools. The Cadian Castellan brick with Nork Deadog going to go stand on the natural makes a decent amount of sense. You have the 2 Kazarkin Chimeras, and then you have the 6 Bulgren. So these are all pieces that kind of work together, but one of the major problems one of the major issues that I foresee for this army is what typically happened when we used to have Bulgren a lot anyway. And that was if somebody charged our Bulgren with a Rhino, we don't get out, right? The Bulgren, they beat the Rhino half to death. They'll do 4 to 6 damage to it or something like that. And then the Bulgren are stuck. They can't move. They can't fall back and shoot. They don't have guns. They can't fall back and charge. So they tend to just kind of get stuck, and they usually don't have something to charge into afterwards, right? We can kill the Rhino that they're engaged with, and the Bulgren can theoretically charge something, but it's very rare that they actually do have that thing to charge. With that in mind, this army is fairly vulnerable to just getting run at. The other big thing is the Catachan Mortars and the Field Ordnance battery. If they're all shooting at a unit of 10 Berserkers, you're only going to kill 5 of them most of the time if you pop ignores cover in the Field Ordnance battery, and realistically you'll kill 3 or 4 if you don't pop ignores cover. So you're ending up not actually doing that much damage with it, and we only have like we do a lot of damage if our opponent just like full shoves all in one go. But if they're able to tag things, if they are able to get into like the Rogalorn commanders, if they're able to touch the chimeras, able to touch the Kazurkin, or like kill the chimeras and consolidate into the Kazakh afterwards. This army feels very prone to, if it fails, it is going to fail catastrophically. And that's one thing that I don't really like in Teams environment. And so I made a couple of adjustments in order to try and make something that will not fail quite as catastrophically nearly as often. Um, so one of the big things is whenever I look at like this 3 Catatrend mortars in the field ordnance, whenever I'm bringing this much indirect, I really want to put Creed in the list. And a couple of reasons for this. One, if the Cadian Castellan brick dies, or like the Cadian Castellan loses access to the Master Vox and can no longer order all of our indirect, the list ceases to function because now all of the indirect is now hitting on fives, and that is it doesn't have to reroll once to hit and doesn't have to reroll once to wound. Suddenly, like they're just a colossal waste of points. And so we really want to have something dedicated because the Caden Castellan is going to be playing on the front line. So I really want to put the Ursa Creed in here. Unfortunately, in order to the other thing that we really want to do is Bulgren are very good on WTC boards, but just the one brick of Bulgren are really expensive and they only really do one thing. They're not a very versatile unit. And so the other thing that I really wanted to do is the 6 Bulgren with the Commissar with Abhuman Detail is very close in points to a second Castellan brick with all the fixings. So I just took those out and put in a Cadian Castellan brick with the Ogren Bodyguard, and this left us with like 25 points left over after the changes because Gaunt's Ghost and Ursa Creed. And so I would love to have kept Nork in the list because I think Nork is cool. However, I do think adding, like downgrading him in order to add, or downgrading him from Nork to just a normal Ogren Bodyguard, he doesn't have the same kind of just raw melee output, but it's almost as good. Like an Ogren Bodyguard is like still fairly decent, and it still does the things. You could alternatively, if you really wanted to keep Nork in here, you could take those 25 points and turn it into a Cyclops instead. I would not feel, I would not really feel too badly about that one, but this is kind of what I'm looking at. And the big reason here is in that situation, like they can't charge the Rhino in, right? They can't charge things into the Cadian Castellan brick because we're going to fall back and shoot with them anyway. We also have a lot more redundancy for making sure that our indirect is firing effectively for multiple turns throughout the course of the game, and it also gives us a plausible reserves threat. The Cadian Castellan brick is just really versatile in ways that the Bulgren brick is really good at stopping 2 damage melee in particular, but the Cadian Castellan brick is also not that bad at that. Like it does it fairly effectively, and it also does a bunch of other things all at the same time. So it's not that I think the Bulgren brick is bad. It's I think it is too rigid, and like we talked about earlier, is too prone to just if one thing fails, the whole house of cards collapses. Whereas this version of the list still does pretty much all the things that we wanted the first list to, but it's not going to collapse all at the same time. So I think this should do a lot of similar things to what Shovel was looking at previously in terms of being able to play against a lot of Marines, but it also has a little bit more freedom to use like that first Caning Cast and Brick. That one can die, but the experience is very often once the first one dies, the second one becomes nearly invulnerable or basically immortal because you're going to kill everything that was trying to, or like everything that could kill the first Caning Cast and Brick is now dead, right? The Dorans have shot it, the other Cast and Brick has shot it, your Kazakh have gone to go fight it. You will not lose the second Cast and Brick very often. And so having just this overwhelming number of bodies, I think, is going to be a little bit stronger for a competitive environment. Overall, though, like I think this list that Shovel put together is fine. It is not likely to fail. It is just if it does fail, it's going to fail hard, and especially in a team's environment. It's okay, like if you have like a bad turn and you say like, "Hey, I'm going to come back with a 12." You play the game and you're just like, "Oh no, some things didn't go my way. I came back with an 8." That's fine. It's not great, but like it's fine. Whereas this version, I think if things don't go your way, it's not, oh, I came back with an 8. It's like, oh, I came back with a 3. And that is the kind of like massive swing that we really, really don't want to see in a team's environment. So having this that's a bit more resilient, a little bit more versatile, while still doing almost all the things we wanted the previous version to do at the same time, is I think going to be a little bit more successful. Cool. Next, we have Scout Sergeant Zaku, another YouTube member coming in. Zaku said that they wanted to play a fun and functional list for GW Terrain because they don't have enough time to play tournaments very often. And a couple interesting things here. They really want to keep the Aquilon Eye in the list because it's the spirit of the list between the Rogaldorn commanders, the Hellhounds, and the Chimeras with heavy flamers. You have some decent targets for the Aquilon Eye to go with the +1 AP on all the auto hitting flamers. I'm not super convinced of its strength, but it's definitely in the spirit of the list. And the other big thing is just trying to make sure you have something relatively functional. Now, I had a lot of time thinking about this list before, but let's go ahead and talk about the original version. So it's a Acadian Command Squad with the Spec Ops Veteran, that's the Stealth Order, Commissar with Abhuman Detail, again, the Ogren one, Gaunt's Ghost, 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, one of which has the Aquilon Eye, Ursula Creed, 10 Cadians, 2 Chimeras with heavy flamers, 1 unit of 10 Rough Riders, 1 unit of 5 Rough Riders, 1 unit of 6 Bulgrin, 2 Kazarkin, 2 Hellhounds, and then 30 points that were not previously spent. So like I touched on, I'm not super convinced that the Aquilon Eye is that powerful, and I am kind of curious like what we could do if we were willing to remove the Hellhounds. However, we're going to keep the Hellhounds in. We're going to keep the Aquilon Eye in because it's part of the spirit of the list. The whole list is kind of built around these Rogaldorn Hellhound combos. So you can get that AP3 Inferno Cannon, 6-3-1, and then I think he has the heavy bolters as well. But these are the changes that I end up settling on. It took me a lot of time to like think about what I wanted to do with this list. I thought about taking out all of the Rough Riders. I thought about taking out the Ursula Creed and the Cadian Command Squad entirely, so you just have the 10 Cadians. But if you take out like the Cadian Command Squad and Ursula Creed, you also have to take out the Rough Riders, and we were very quickly getting into like points where if you look at like Shovel, I only took out 2 units and downgraded another, right? I took out the Commissar Bulgrin, and then I took out Gaunt's Ghost. So, like, Gaunt's Ghost became Ursula Creed, the Commissar and Bulgrin became the Cadian Castle Brick, Narc Deadhog was just downgraded. I didn't want, like, it's a lot of points, but realistically, it's not a lot of things actually changing. And this, I wanted to do a similar thing. I didn't want to just rebuild the list in the way that I wanted to. I wanted to make sure it was still something that was still mostly Zaku's style. And for that, the biggest thing here is I'm not super convinced that Aquilon Eye is a super strong enhancement. I think it's okay. I don't really think that Spec Ops Veteran is very strong, especially if you're only going to be bringing the 10 Cadians, because 10 Stealth or I guess 10 Stealth Cadians, a Command Squad, and Ursula Creed. 10 Stealth Cadians are just really not that much more durable than 10 Cadians without stealth, and take cover is usually going to be better. And it's not like a huge difference. Like, you can still pop Armor of Contempt in order to get them even better functional saves. There's still lots of ways for like the Ursula Creed brick to do things. However, the major thing that I was looking at is you don't really want, like, sending Bulgrin to go stand in your natural is something that you can do, but it's not what you want to do with your Bulgrin. You really want your Bulgrin to be hanging out in the middle of the board so that they have as much reach as possible. If anybody plays chess, like, Knights on the Rim are dim because they're kind of slow, they lose a lot of squares that they can go to. Similar thing is true with the Bulgrin. The Bulgrin want to be able to go anywhere, right? Rough Riders are going to move 12 or 15 inches. They can get to things even if they're on the edge of the board. Bulgrin are going to move 6 inches. They're not going to be making a lot of charges if they are forced to move all across the board. Standing on our natural is not usually where we want them to be. So we really want to free them up by dropping the enhancement, getting rid of 5 Rough Riders, and putting in a Acadian Command Squad and Ogre and Bodyguard so that we have our thing that wants to go stand on our natural objective, and then the rest of the army can play the mid-board more aggressively now that we know that we have something that's relatively durable that our opponent does have to commit to in order to get us off of that objective. Overall, I think the big thing here is just making sure that we have our game plan for actually scoring our primary so that the rest of our army can focus on propping that up and also denying our opponent's primary. But otherwise, it made a lot of sense to me. I do want to show you guys the other version of the list that I was thinking about, and this is not necessarily the one I would like full focus on, but something that you can consider. So just as we were talking about, we could take out the Cadian Command Squad, Spec Ops Veteran, and Ursula Creed. But in so doing, we now no longer have enough orders. We don't really have a way to support the Rough Riders. They do really need those orders. However, we can play a more aggressive, a more we don't need to focus on holding our objective as much if we're just going to go kill them, if we're just going to go create pressure on the board. So if we get rid of the Cadian Command Squad and Ursula Creed and then all the Rough Riders, and we downgrade one Chimera to a Torox, we can get an entire another Kazakhin Torox and 6 more Bulgrin. So now we suddenly have those 12 Bulgrin who are going to be playing up in the middle of the board, which is very scary. We can actually really start to use those to push instead of kind of being a blocker. And then the now 2 units of Kazakhin that are going to be in Toroxes can really go as these missiles. So we can put a lot more pressure on our opponent. I know lots of players really like to go just push up and go fight our opponent. This is the way to do that. Whereas this is more, to be honest, it's more my style of gameplay where you just kind of build a trench and then you build your base and then defense it, right? This is, I don't care about my base as much. I'm going to go kill yours. So different ways of playing. I think they're both relatively good. Okay, next we have Ham, Ham, Ham coming in. He likes to play competitive-ish on GW terrain, but says that he really needs a gimmick or like some combo in order to stay focused, in order to stay engaged with the game. So he's got to do something a little bit funky, and the way that he's doing that right now is in Mechanized Assault. So let's go ahead and talk about the list real quick. It's a Cadian Command Squad, Ursa Creed, 1 Rogaldorn Commander, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 2 Chimeras, 2 Toroxes, 3 Kazarkin, 3 units of 3 Ogren, 1 unit of 5 Krieg Engineers, 1 unit of Krieg Flamers, 2 Lemuric Exterminators, and 1 Scout Sentinel. So the first thing that he asks, is the Sticky and the Master Vox worth it? You don't really need these. You just need the 10 Cadians to kind of stand on your home. He also asks, should he give up his focus on armor penetration mods and drop one of the Exterminators? I think if you had the order economy, if you had another squadron order running around in this list, it would make a lot more sense to have this second Exterminator, but because you only have the 1 Rogaldorn Commander and it being Mechanized Assault, where you don't have another way to get that third order to the Exterminator, I'm really low on Russ's other than like the Lehman Russ battle tank not having orders. And then the other one, his initial thought was replace the Flamers and the Engineers with something, maybe. My big thing when I look at this list is the Lehman Russ Exterminator and the Rogaldorn Commander is a powerful combo. You do have enough firepower to like shoot things. But one of the big things that I really wanted from this list is the ability to go say, hey, this thing that is behind a wall and not on an objective, so I can't clear and secure it with my Kazarkin, I want it dead. And the best way to do that is with Scions in a Torox Prime. It's not as fast, but it does tons of damage. You are spending like Rogaldorn points on this, but it is going to kill a ton of whatever, and you have the reroll. Which one? Reroll hits from the Torox Prime, and then the reroll 1s to wound, regardless of where the opponent is with +1 to wound. You're actually still going to be doing quite a bit of damage anyway, so I really wanted to get that unit in there, and here's how I was able to do it. So the first one is the Cadian Command Squad. I think that's kind of free points that we can get rid of. The Lemuric Exterminator, another unit that we can just kind of get rid of, simply because it doesn't have an order. It's not super exciting. And from there, we can use those points to put in the Torox Prime, and then 1 Scion, or 5 Scions plus a Scion Command Squad. The other thing that we were really looking for is we could just add those in, but he was trying to focus a little bit more on having just like the 4 transports, which I think is a pretty reasonable number. So in order to do that, we are also dropping a Chimera and then 2 units of 10 Catachan in order to support the second Scion Command Squad and 5 Scions. And we needed 5 more points. If we just dropped a Chimera and Catachan. We needed to find 5 points, so we're also going to downgrade one of the units of 10 Catachan to 5 Krieg Engineers. A couple big things about this. So we have a little bit more tools to go kill big things that are hiding behind walls that are not on objectives with the Scions. The other big thing is we now have that like it's really nice in this army to have something with deep strike or something in reserve so that our opponent does have to respect the fact that we can get into their back lines at some point. So having that second unit of Scions is really, really nice for that. And if there's no opportunity to do that, one of the things that you'll oftentimes find yourself doing is you're going to deep strike Scions next to, or you're going to like rapid ingress deep strike Scions next to one of your transports, and then Ursa Creed is going to be like, okay, now boys get into the transport at the end of our opponent's turn. So you will be able to get the +1 to wound on them, and you will be able to have like this extra unit to just go punch people with, which is very, very nice. And then the Krieg Engineers are just there. We're just saving 5 points in order to put them in over the Catachan. They are kind of like other Catachan in a lot of ways, saving 5 points there. But other than that, this is pretty similar. I think the Krieg Flamers and the Krieg Engineers, you do have some options with what you can do with those points. If you really wanted to take like one of them and turn them into a Scout Sentinel, that's totally something that you can do. If you really wanted to get like the Canadian Command Squad back, that's something you could do, but I oftentimes found myself just running Creed around by herself in Mechanized Assault. And the Ogren, I mean, you could always go with like more damage. You could go with like more Scions if you really wanted to find like another transport similar to the way that Robert Moreland goes. But overall, this is actually a list that I would consider just playing at a GT. It's very similar to a shell of the Mechanized Assault that I was looking at previously, but you have more things because we were able to drop one of the Rogel Dorn commanders down to a Luminous Exterminator, and thereby just get more stuff to play the board, which is a really big deal. Okay, I have one more list to show you guys today. This one comes out from DxRam, also playing Grizzled Company, and this one was the one that I took a look at first. Ooh, did I finish? Oh, I didn't. Wait, did I? Kind of. I forgot to add something. We'll get to that in a moment. Anyway, so this was DxRam's attempt at getting something that is a spiritual successor to Nemo's Recon. And let's go ahead and get into the list, and then we'll talk about my thoughts about it. So it has Ursula Creed, 2 Canadian Command Squads, a Krieg Command Squad, a Canadian Castellan with the Aquiline Eye, again the +1 AP, Gaunt's Ghost, 5 units of 10 Krieg, 1 unit of 20 Krieg, 2 units of 20 Cadians, 3 units of Kazarkin, 3 Krieg Flamers, 3 Catachan Mortars, 1 unit of 5 Rattlings, and a Cyclops to deny the Bring It Down redraw. Okay, so my first thought looking at this is it is significantly less durable than Recon is. The army-wide benefit of cover and the army-wide functionally like kind of armor of contempt, if you want to think about it, from the being in cover and also having the detachment rule, meant that all of this in Recon is extraordinarily more durable. It's like another tier more durable. Whereas this one, you get more damage out of it naturally because you have to reroll once to hit and sometimes reroll once to wound. So you do more damage in this version of the list than you would in Recon. However, you do not have the incredible anti-melee strats that Recon has. So the reactive flat 6, where you can just make your opponent roll 6 more on the dice, and then the -2 to charge is an incredibly powerful combo that does not exist in Grizzled Company, and so you can't quite play it the same way. And my second concern looking at this is that it is slow. There's not a lot of scout. You have like the 3 units of Kazarkin, whereas Nemo's list typically have like 20 to 30 Catachan instead, which are cheap. Like you're spending almost half the points on the 30 Catachan as compared to the 30 Kazarkin. So it's slow, and it's mostly 6-inch move. And remember, again, like Nemo's version tends to have 20 Rough Riders, which move 12 or could move 15. This has nothing that moves faster. I guess the Cyclops, I think the Cyclops moves 8, but basically the entire army moves 6 base, and then could move 9 if it wants to. And then you're spending a lot of CP potentially to snap to it different targets. So my big thoughts here are if we're not going to just cross out Grizzle Company and write Recon in instead, we need to solve ways in order to get that pressure onto the board, in order to get more reach, in order to force our opponent to respect the fact that we can be on their half of the board, whereas the Grizzle Company that DxRam has here is going to struggle to get to our opponent's side of the board rather consistently. And so, in order to do that, um, first thing, the Catachan mortars, just as we were looking at with Shovel's list, 3 inch Catachan mortars, like you're gonna kill Crude, you're gonna kill cultists, like you can kill poxwalkers, but you're not going to be killing a lot more than that. They even kind of struggle to kill guardsmen, simply because like cultists and poxwalkers tend to have like 6 up saves. Whereas guardsmen have 5 up saves, but it could be a 4 up save, and in cover it could be a 3 up save, right? The Catachan mortars just don't do that much damage into a lot of targets, and he mentioned that like they kind of do damage into vehicles. Not really. Yeah, they have the, like the reroll ones to wound into vehicles, but you're still passing them low numbers of AP 0 saves, so it doesn't really solve our anti-vehicle. The other big thing is the 50 Krieg. Those really rely in Recon on just having cover all the time. So we have enough things, right? We have the 320 bricks between the 20 Krieg, the 2 units of 20 Cadians. We have the Kazarkin, which are actually going to be doing some battle. We have the Krieg Flamers, so we do have our anti-marines, especially because they're going to be 5-2-2, AP2, because they have the Aquilin Eye. We need ways to get to our opponent's side of the board. And so I dropped all of the Krieg and all the mortars because they're not contributing a ton to the game plan, and added 2 Scion command squads, one going to be leading 5 Scions, one going to be leading 10 Scions, and then we're also going to add 10 Rough Riders. This gives us a lot of much needed damage that we can actually put into different places where we can actually go like attack medium medium to heavy vehicles a little bit better with the Scions and the Rough Riders, whereas the rest of the list kind of wasn't doing that. And we can also be on their side of the board. Our opponent now has to screen. Our opponent now has to respect the fact that if they're playing like a bunch of melee, we can charge Rough Riders directly into them. So they do have to respect the fact that we can like kill them back if they just shove their entire army at us. One of the other big things about the last thing is you can throw in the Spec Ops veteran. That's what I forgot to put in the PowerPoint. Not because I think it's super good. It's like it's okay on the Creed brick. If you have the Ursula Creed, Cadian Command Squad, and 20 Cadians who are touching an objective and have cover, therefore, because of the Cadian Command Squad, and you pop Arm of Contempt, a double Gatling Despoiler is only expecting to kill about 10 of them. So that's actually pretty cool. Are you going to do it every turn? No. Are you going to do it into every army? No. But it's 20 points, and I couldn't figure out what else to spend the 20 points on, to be entirely honest. You could probably like fiddle with the Flamers if you wanted to, but again, keeping the Aquilin Eye, keeping the Flamers in, actually a relatively interesting combo. But anyway, so we now have a lot of much needed damage. We have a lot more reach. I'm still not super sure if this is going to be like the peak of competitive, but I think it is now something where we can actually start experimenting a little bit more in order to try and keep our opponent on the back foot. If we ever lose tempo as guard, we tend to be losing. We really, really want to be controlling where the battle happens on the board, and having those tools that can play further forward on the board than what we had before is going to be very helpful here. You could consider, if you wanted to, like dropping the 10 Scions down to a 5 and adding in like some Catachan, or yeah, that's probably like the main thing I would consider. Uh, yeah, overall, it's a really interesting one. You still have a lot of bodies. You are still leaning into a certain kind of skew. The one other thing that you would really be looking at with this list is considering whether or not one of these 20 breaks of the Krieg or the Cadians wants to start in reserve, so you can either come in rapid ingress and then go take cover, take cover, take cover on a bunch of your army, or if you want to have them in reserve and then coming out on your turn, so you like move, move, move a bunch of your army, and then they come in and be like, first ring fire, second fire, first ring fire, second ring fire, first ring fire, second ring fire on a bunch of your army all at the same time, or give the fixed bayonets in the right situations. Definitely interesting, definitely something to keep in mind, but I think this has a lot more reach. This one you're going to win some games just because you have too many bodies, but that's not something we should really be counting on when we don't have those stacking defensive buffs that Recon has. Whereas this one doesn't have, it's not going to win as many games on, hey, I have too many things for you to kill, but you still have a lot for your opponent to kill, and now you actually have some damage to follow it up. Anyway, that's the last list I wanted to show you guys. Thank you to all of the YouTube members who have submitted list for this episode of List Doctor. If you're interested, once again, go ahead and join the channel. There's a button down below the video. Also, going into 2026, I'm going to have plenty of time for coaching, so I'm opening that up once again. Go ahead. The best way to get a hold of me is on Discord to try and set up some times for that if you want to get preparation in for your upcoming events, RTTs, GTs, teams events, whatever it is that you have, let me know. If you're just trying to get better at generally thinking about the game, also I'm happy to do that. And of course, we have a great community as well to talk to everyone. So if you go ahead and join the Discord, go ahead and hit me up. Let me know what you guys want to do. Happy New Year, everyone, and we'll see you guys all soon. So thank you so much for tuning in. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.